I've always been the reliable one in my family, the one who pays her own bills, shows up on time, and never asks for a dime. My younger sister, Vanessa, is different. At 26, she still lives with our parents, drifts from one big idea to the next, and somehow always has a new designer bag hanging off her arm. At last weekend's family party, she cornered me between the dessert table and the patio door. Her tone was syrup sweet. Nat, I need end 290 for a new business idea. It's going to be huge. I laughed until I realized she was serious. I told her no. Firm, final. She didn't argue. She just smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. An hour later, that same smile was on her face as she stood by the pool, my laptop in her hands. "Oh, sorry," she smirked. "I accidentally dropped it." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. The chatter from the patio, the clinking of glasses, the hum of my uncle's laugh, it all faded as I watched my 500 work laptop hit the water with a hollow splash. Time slowed. The ripples swallowed it whole, the silver casing disappearing under a shimmer of blue. My stomach dropped in perfect sync. "What the hell, Vanessa?" My voice was sharper than I intended, but not nearly sharp enough to cut through the smug curve of her lips. She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Oh, relax. It's just a laptop. Just a laptop." That laptop was my livelihood custom software, client contracts, months of ongoing campaigns stored on its drives. Before I could respond, Mom materialized beside us, her wine glass in hand. "Nat, it was obviously an accident," she said, her tone more exasperated with me than with the one who'd just drowned my work. I looked at her, waiting for even the smallest flicker of concern. Nothing. Dad was nowhere in sight, and the rest of the family had already turned back to their conversations, as if nothing had happened. I knelt by the pool, reaching in and pulling the sodden machine from the water. It dripped like a dying animal in my hands, each drop a reminder of how fast things can be destroyed. Vanessa stayed rooted in place, that smirk never leaving her face. "You know," she said casually, "if you'd just helped me with the 29 grand, this wouldn't have been necessary." Necessary? I felt something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't anger, not the hot, explosive kind. Anyway, this was quieter, heavier, the kind of cold that stays. "Enjoy the party," I told her, my voice steady. I wrapped the laptop in a towel from the lounge chair and walked inside without another word. The rest of the evening blurred. I smiled when spoken to, nodded in the right places, and avoided Vanessa's orbit entirely. But every time I caught a glimpse of her across the room, she looked almost expectant, like she was waiting for me to explode so she could play the victim. I didn't give her that satisfaction. By the time I got home, my fingers were stiff from holding back every word I wanted to say. I set the ruined laptop on my kitchen counter and stared at it under the dim overhead light. If Vanessa thought this was over, she was wrong. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. When people expect you to scream, silence unnerves them more than any insult ever could. That night, I didn't rant to friends, didn't call my parents, didn't send Vanessa a single message. I made tea, sat at my kitchen counter with my soggy laptop still wrapped in a towel, and opened my backup laptop. One by one, I started closing doors. Netflix sign out of all devices, Amazon Prime new password 2-step verification. Spotify, Apple Music, Hulu changed. The shared Apple ID that Vanessa had been piggybacking on for years? Gone. It was almost therapeutic, like pulling weeds from a garden I'd been too tired to tend. Every click felt like reclaiming a piece of my life she'd been draining without a second thought. I didn't stop at entertainment. I reviewed my financial accounts, locked the joint card my parents had added me to when I was in college, and shifted some savings into an account only I controlled. Vanessa didn't have direct access to my money yet, but she had a habit of finding ways to benefit from what I had. Not anymore. By the time the clock blinked 1:47 a.m., I'd changed 13 passwords, activated extra security on all my cloud storage, and set up alerts on every bank account. I shut the laptop with a soft click, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled. This wasn't revenge, not yet. This was insurance. At exactly 6:15 a.m., My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Vanessa's name. I let it ring. It buzzed again, this time a text. Vanessa. Why can't I log into Netflix? A second later. Vanessa. Amazon's not working either. Did you change the password? I sipped my coffee before replying. Me? Yeah. Along with Apple Music, Hulu, and Spotify. You don't pay for them, so you don't get to use them. Read. No reply. 15 minutes later, Mom called. She didn't even bother with hello. Nat, what is this? Vanessa says you've locked her out of everything. That's petty. That's boundaries, I said evenly. She made a mistake. It was an accident. You're her sister, you're supposed to help her. Not punish her. I didn't argue. Because in my family, arguing just confirms you're the problem. Instead, I let the silence stretch until she huffed, muttered something about always being dramatic, and hung up. I set my phone down, finished my coffee, and smiled to myself. If this was how they reacted to losing streaming accounts, I couldn't wait to see their faces when they realized what was really coming. By noon, my phone had become a grenade with the pin half pulled. Every time it buzzed, I braced myself for another explosion. First came the group text from Mom. Family should stick together. Don't let something small tear us apart. Small. Apparently, drowning a 500 laptop, and then demanding 29.0 counted as small in my mother's world. Then Dad called, his voice low, like we were discussing the weather instead of my sister's stunt. Nat, your mother's worried. You two need to make peace. It's not worth fighting over. I almost laughed. Dad, she destroyed my work. She hasn't apologized, and she's been using my accounts for years. He sighed. She's your sister. She's young. She's 26. He didn't answer. Just mumbled something about letting it go before hanging up. By late afternoon, the real show began. Vanessa posted a selfie on Instagram, full makeup, pouty lips, captioned, "Some people let money turn them cold." No names, but everyone in our family knew exactly who she meant. It didn't stop there. At 8:42 p.m., I got a screenshot from my cousin, who'd been added to a group chat with Vanessa, my parents, and several aunts and uncles. Vanessa had typed, "Nat's punishing me because I asked for help with a business idea. She's holding grudges, changing passwords, and making me look bad." An aunt replied, "That's not surprising. She's always been like that." Another chimed in, "Money changes people." Not a single message asked for my side of the story. I put my phone down and stared at the wall. I'd seen this pattern before. Vanessa plays the victim, Mom validates her, Dad stays silent. The rest of the family piles on. It was a script we'd been acting out for years, except this time, I wasn't going to improvise the same ending. They wanted me to explode, to defend myself so they could twist my words and prove I was the cold one. Instead, I went still. When Vanessa called an hour later, I didn't pick up. When Mom sent another message, "Call your sister and fix this," I didn't answer. I poured a glass of wine, opened my notebook, and started writing down every incident I could remember. Dates, amounts, screenshots, receipts. If they wanted to treat me like the villain, fine. But when the curtain came down, they were going to see who'd really been pulling the strings. And for the first time in years, I felt calm. I'd spent most of my life reacting, explaining myself, defending my choices, trying to convince my family to see things from my side. It had never worked, so I stopped. Instead, I opened a new page in my notebook and wrote 3 words in capital letters. Control the narrative. If I was going to end this cycle, it wouldn't be with a shouting match at the dinner table. It would be with precision, patience, and proof. The first step was securing my own ground. I ordered a new laptop that night, top of the line, with encrypted drives and biometric login. I upgraded every online account with hardware security keys. Vanessa could be persistent, but she wasn't tech-savvy. She wouldn't get past my new walls. Next, I started a timeline. Not just the laptop incident, but every major moment she'd crossed a line. The borrowed credit card that racked up 1,200 in charges before I caught it. The dress she returned to my closet with a red wine stain hidden under the hem. The time she used my professional headshot on her resume to land a client meeting she didn't deserve. I wrote it all down. Dates, witnesses, screenshots. This wasn't revenge for one laptop. This was building a case against a pattern. By the third day, I had a binder thick enough to snap shut with a satisfying click. It wasn't just a pile of grievances, it was a history book no one in my family had ever bothered to read. That's when I made my first quiet move. I reached out to Taylor, a college friend who now worked in the legal department of a local business association. I kept the conversation casual, but I made sure to ask about hypothetical cases of someone using another person's name and credentials in a business pitch without consent. Taylor's answer was exactly what I'd hoped for. Not only was it unethical, it could open the perpetrator to civil liability. I filed that away like an ace in my back pocket. The following week, a crack in Vanessa's armor appeared. At brunch with some mutual acquaintances, I overheard one of her friends, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, gossiping about Vanessa's big new venture. Apparently, she'd been telling people that I was her silent partner and marketing mentor, the kind of endorsement that would make investors comfortable writing a check. It took everything in me not to smile right there at the table. She'd handed me the perfect opening. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I went home, poured another coffee, and started digging. I combed through her LinkedIn, her Instagram, even old posts on her abandoned blog. Sure enough, there it was, a blurry photo of her work setup with my old logo on the screen. Sloppy, Vanessa. I sent a text to an old client who'd once been approached by scammy startups. Hey, if you ever hear my name being used in connection with a company I'm not part of, would you let me know? He replied within the hour. Funny you should say that. And forwarded me a PDF of a pitch deck Vanessa had sent to a potential investor, and there it was, in bold, under advisors, Natalia S., marketing consultant. With my actual LinkedIn link beneath it, I sat back in my chair, the page glowing on my screen. If this were a chess game, Vanessa had just moved her queen into my line of fire without realizing it. Now all I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to strike. I didn't move immediately. In war, timing is as important as firepower, and I had both. The pitch deck Vanessa had circulated was a gift, bold, reckless, and incriminating, but it wasn't enough on its own. I wanted an airtight case, something no family loyalty, no crocodile tears, could sweep under the rug. For the next week, I became a collector. I gathered the Instagram screenshots where she'd bragged about making moves with my big sis behind the scenes. I printed the email from that potential investor who'd turned her down but noted that having Natalia on board is impressive. I retrieved the chat logs from a mutual friend where she admitted to teaching Nat a lesson by destroying my laptop. Every piece went into the binder neatly labeled, chronologically arranged. This wasn't just evidence. It was a narrative, a map from accident to outright fraud. The final piece fell into my lap 3 days later. Mr. Carson, yes. The same family friend who'd once been at my high school graduation called me out of the blue. His investment firm had been approached by Vanessa and her partner. He'd declined, politely, but something in her pitch had nagged at him. When he saw my name under advisors, he decided to check in. I thanked him for the heads up, asked him to forward everything, and added his email to the binder. Now I had proof of unauthorized use of my identity, screenshots of her admitting to damaging my property, evidence of her misrepresenting me to secure funding, a clear financial motive, the 29-0 investment she'd asked for. It was time. Step 1. Precision strike. I forwarded the entire binder scanned, bookmarked, impossible to misinterpret to my lawyer friend Ethan. Within 24 hours, he drafted a cease and desist letter that made even me flinch when I read it. We sent it to Vanessa, her business partner, and for good measure CC'd my parents. I didn't call. I didn't text. I let the silence do its work. The response was almost comical. First came the outrage. You're ruining everything. I thought you wanted me to succeed. Then the guilt trip. You're my sister. How could you do this to me? Finally, the threats. When I make it big, you'll regret this. I ignored all of it. Ethan had told me the fastest way to rattle her was to give her nothing to push against. Step 2. Exposure. I sent the same binder to every investor she'd approached. No accusations, no emotional appeals, just a short professional note. This is to clarify that I have no involvement in this venture and do not endorse it in any way. By the end of the week, her business partner had dropped her. The friends who'd been hyping her suddenly stopped tagging her in posts. Even the aunts who'd been calling me cold went radio silent. Step 3. The family reveal. I printed a condensed version of the binder and mailed it to my parents with a sticky note on the cover. Thought you should see the whole story. No response needed. I knew my mother's instinct would be to defend Vanessa, but I also knew my father was a detail man. He'd read every page. For 48 hours, nothing. Then, a text from Mom, "We'll talk." I didn't reply. 2 nights later, Vanessa walked into their living room to find both parents waiting for her, binder in hand. According to my aunt, who couldn't resist giving me the play-by-play, Dad had gone through each piece of evidence line by line, asking for explanations she couldn't give. She tried the usual lines. "It was an accident. I didn't mean it. She's making it look worse than it is." But this time, they didn't bite. The moment Dad told her to pack your things and go, I knew the cycle had cracked. Step 4. The final twist of the knife without ever touching her. I made sure news of a lucrative new contract I'd landed reached her through mutual friends. The retainer alone was worth more than the 29,000 she'd tried to con me out of. I didn't flaunt it publicly, just posted a single photo of my upgraded workspace, sunlight pouring over a sleek new laptop. Vanessa saw it, I know she did, and I wanted her to understand without me saying a word that not only had she failed to hurt me, she'd propelled me further. The beauty of the whole thing was that I'd never screamed, never begged anyone to take my side, never thrown a public tantrum. I'd simply turned on the lights and let the truth speak for itself. And it was deafening. The silence from my parents lasted 4 full days. Not a single text. Not a call. Not even a passive-aggressive group chat message from Mom. On the 5th day, my phone lit up with my aunt's name. "Nat," she said, her voice lowered, like we were discussing state secrets. "Things at your parents' house are tense." Apparently, the night before, Dad had cornered Vanessa in the living room with my binder open on the coffee table. He'd gone through it page by page, every screenshot, every email, every bank statement, until there was no space left for excuses. Vanessa tried the usual script. "It was an accident. I didn't mean it. She's twisting everything." But this time, Mom didn't swoop in to save her. My aunt said she just sat there, lips pressed tight, while Dad told Vanessa to start packing. "No more handouts," he'd said. "No more just this once. You've burned through your chances." By the next morning, Vanessa was gone, 2 suitcases, a duffel bag, and no plan. Word traveled fast through the family network. The same cousins and uncles who'd called me cold and selfish now had nothing to say. The group chat went dead. It was almost funny when I'd been painted as the villain. Everyone had an opinion. But now that the truth was laid out in black and white, they couldn't type fast enough to stay silent. Her so-called friends? Half of them stopped answering her calls after the cease and desist letter went around. The rest quietly unfollowed her on social media, like they didn't want to be anywhere near the blast zone. One mutual acquaintance told me they'd heard her business had completely collapsed, no investors, no partner, no money. She'd been couch surfing with a couple of old friends, the same ones she used to brag about outgrowing. I should have felt triumphant. But when I ran into her 3 weeks later, I didn't feel triumph. I was leaving a coffee shop when I spotted her across the street. Her hair was unbrushed, makeup smudged, wearing the same wrinkled hoodie I'd seen her in at family barbecues. She wasn't scrolling through her phone like usual, just staring at the sidewalk, shoulders rounded like she'd been carrying something heavy for too long. For the first time in years, there was no smirk, no sarcasm, no challenge in her eyes. She glanced up, saw me, and looked away without a word. I kept walking. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. Justice had already been served. She'd done it to herself, every cut string, every burned bridge, every door slammed shut. All I'd done was stop protecting her from the consequences she'd been running from her whole life. It's been 6 months since Vanessa walked out of my parents' house with 2 suitcases and no plan. We haven't spoken since. Mom sends the occasional holiday text, short, polite, stripped of the usual guilt trips. Dad's messages are even shorter. "Hope you're well." The endless lectures about helping family have stopped, replaced by an uneasy truce. I didn't set out to break my family. I set out to protect myself. And in doing so, I think I showed them something they'd spent years avoiding, that protecting Vanessa wasn't love. It was just enabling her to stay the same. My business is stronger than ever. The new laptop has already paid for itself twice over, and I've built walls around my life that no one gets through without earning the right. I still keep the binder, not because I plan to use it again, but as a reminder. Boundaries aren't built in one dramatic moment, they're built in 100 quiet decisions to stop letting people treat you like you owe them everything. Sometimes I wonder if Vanessa ever thinks about what she lost, but then I remember it's not my job to wonder. Because in the end, the most powerful revenge wasn't destroying her. It was walking away and letting her destroy herself. And I did, calmly, completely, without ever raising my voice,